Guys, you need to buckle up because our guest today has been a law firm managing partner, a beverage industry CEO, and an international entrepreneur who built businesses in post-Soviet Russia. While the rules were still being written, I'll say, is the author of the Pinball Theory of Business and Life. And today is the guy that CEOs they go to, they call him when they need the honest conversation nobody inside their company will give them. So with that, let's welcome our guest. Hello, Marty. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me, Bola.
It's awesome. I'm excited and I feel honored to be speaking with you, Matthew. So, you've been a lawyer, a CEO, and a founder. What's the career lesson that shows up in all these three roles, no matter the title? Can you share with us?
That's quite a deep question. I think I have a strong belief in the foundational values of leadership, really basic things: honesty, trustworthiness, teamwork. Uh, and as we make transitions in our careers, many of which are unexpected, at least in my case, I think if we can take those types of traits and values with us, we'll be consistent in who we are and how we attempt to collaborate with others and often lead.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. So, so you mentioned unexpected, and I know that in your role, in different multiple roles that you've had, you must have dealt with some, I'll call them real life crises, in your career. That's most likely nobody warned you about. I'd like you to tell our listeners, maybe pick one and tell us, share with us, and what lesson did you learn from this real life crisis in your career?
Well, I've had more than one, as you guessed. Uh, when I started as a law clerk in my law firm, where I ultimately spent over 20 years and became managing partner, my expectation was I would be a lawyer practicing law with this fine group the rest of my life. And by accident, one of our clients had an export contract, which I review with my partners. I got very interested in international work and wanted to do it full time. That created a crisis for my self-image, all my responsibilities as a father and a husband and a managing partner of a law firm. And it was extremely difficult to make the decision when I was apparently at the height of my career to leave and start over.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's what I did. And one of the things that pushed me towards that decision was knowing so many people, clients, others, who later in their lives had these regrets about not trying something.
Mm.
And you've all of us have been around people. We've been at a meeting or a networking event or a cocktail party, and somebody tells us, I've got this great idea, and someday I'm going to.
Yeah.
Well, someday very rarely happens because it takes so much funding and energy and mental change to transition from one career to another.
Hmm.
But that's what I did. And I would say that was a tremendous lesson in trying to balance the responsibilities one has to yourself and to others with your desire to try something that has no certainty of success. So I think that was sort of a pivotal uh, personal crisis, professional crisis that I brought on my own. I wasn't forced into it at all. And I
Right.
think many entrepreneurs who are in some setting and where they're excelling and they feel they can take those resources and contacts and just more or less seamlessly move into their new life, I think for many of us will find it's not that easy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But I also like what you said about you use the word jump. And I know that this life is full of uncertainties. And you said it right, that in meetings, many people will say, oh, someday I wish I could do certain things. But they also want to hear from you. How could they make that jump, even with the uncertainties? Are there some, I'll call it maybe guidance, some insight that you can share with us so that people will know, okay, maybe if I could put certain things in place, maybe it can make it seamless to make the jump.
Yes. The title of my book, by the way, The Pinball Theory of Business and Life,
Mhm.
reflects the changes that you have some control over and some things you have no control over.
Yeah.
So when you're making this, hopefully a heartfelt decision to move in a new direction, I think it's valuable to recognize that your enthusiasm and desire and intentionality about making something work well doesn't minimize the actual risk of doing it.
Yeah.
I think we get such a head of steam that we feel like we will overcome whatever the impediments are because this is such a good idea. So everybody's told me, go do it.
Yeah.
That's very different than when you wake up in the middle of the night and realize you have no income. There is no revenue yet. You don't know how you're going to build the business. Of course, people have their pro formas and make their assumptions, but I think I would suggest that to be on the other side of the enthusiasm in your own mind, as if you were an investor in your new venture, have done due diligence and start recognizing all the shortcomings that's hard for me to admit.
Right.
So it's not that I want to suggest to people not to pursue they're more than dreams. To the people that make these leaps, it's realistic to them. They think they can do it. They don't know exactly. But I think in the balance is where you make good decisions, recognizing the reasons you want to do it, the enthusiasm, the courage, the energy, and what happens if it doesn't quite work out the way I expected? How will I pay my mortgage? How will I, on and on and on. So I think if a person can bring some balance, almost a counterbalance to their enthusiasm, they'll make well-informed decisions as best they can. Mm-hmm. But I think many entrepreneurs are so certain that success will follow, that they can get 3% of the market, whatever. So I just think we should challenge ourselves as if we were an outsider looking in and seeing all the shortcomings that we may not be able to focus on ourselves.
So that's so good. You are telling us to, as business owners, put on the investor cap and challenge ourselves. I like that. And this is a good time to go talk about your book, The Pinball Theory. Your book used this metaphor of a pinball machine. I would like to know, how does that apply to someone managing their career day to day? Maybe if you can share with us maybe one or two takeaways from your book and how people can use it in their career in terms of managing their career.
Okay. Well, it hit me, I don't know when, 15, 20 years ago, as I was making different changes, that when I always thought I was in control. You know, you don't make these big changes when you think you're not in control.
That's right.
And so I realized you do have some control. It's like when we were kids playing pinballs, you can pull back the spring and shoot the pinball. You've got levers on the side that you can flip, the little flippers, and you can flip the ball. So, and sometimes it goes in the hole and the score is going up. You think, I really got this. And all of a sudden, the ball is going the wrong way and the score is coming down. And he said, how could I be so ineffective? So that's the pinball theory, that we do have a lot of control and we should plan and we should make a logical plan. And there's other things going on in the universe beyond our control. And I think if we don't think that we have complete autonomy in business in this world, we'll be much more flexible in responding to those elements over which we don't have control. So I'll try to think of an example. Here's an example. When I was CEO of these two beverage companies, and they had a international following, and things were going well. And then there was a huge storm that flooded our part of the city, flooded our business,
Wow.
flooded our laboratory, regulated laboratory, flooded our inventory, put us out of business.
Wow.
And a lot of other companies, big and small, in our part of the city. And, in 30 minutes, it's over, it's sun shining, and our business is out of commission. What do you do? Have you thought enough in advance to plan for such crisis? Well, sure we did. We had insurance.
Yeah.
Big number on the policy. I don't know what it was, $10 million. It doesn't matter. $5 million, $100 million. And then you find out, depending how water enters into your building, does it come up from the drain? Does it come through the doors? There are all types of exemptions in your coverage.
Wow. Yeah.
And you no longer have 5, 10, $50 million of coverage. You got 3,000. So, and so I learned, even though I was a lawyer, had dealt with insurance companies and their representatives many years, I learned I knew very little about certain elements of a commercial insurance contract. And then learn how to deal with that. And little by little, we pieced it together until we figure out how to get the maximum coverage possible. And then it came down to a forensic CPA was sent in by the insurance company, supposedly to help us make our claim. And I quickly realized I brought our CPA in and myself with a lot of experience with insurance claims, and he wasn't there to help us. He was there to minimize our claim. And so we told him not to come back, and they sent in 2 mature insurance adjusters, really capable people. And we met and we talked and we made our claim, and they said the company wouldn't accept it. And we said, we can't move forward without you accepting this, what we need to stay in business. And finally I told them, I said, when I was a lawyer, I never liked this ploy of splitting the difference, because it means you don't have a basis for what you really want. And I said, we need to save this business. You need to pay a claim as reasonably as you can. Let's split the difference. They said, we have no authority to do that. I said, of course you don't. Call whoever has the authority and tell them this is what we need to do. This is how you're going to honor your insurance. And we did. And they did. And we were able to come out of it. So you don't always know how things are going to work out. You think you've prepared well. We had serious insurance coverage. Things happen beyond our control, beyond our expectations. And I do believe that what I said at the beginning about if you stick with the fundamentals, like these basics of handling yourself properly, acting with integrity, being candid with people. If you're lucky enough to deal with good people, I think it comes back to help us in these situations in which we can't anticipate how they will work through.
So good. So the lesson is there are things that we can control. We should do our best to control those things, but there are also items that are outside our control. We'll need to manage those ones. That's what I'm hearing there.
It's really managing the bounce. All of a sudden you're bounced around and you feel like this is not right. This is not fair. And it's not, except that's life.
Yeah. So let's talk about leadership and your experience as a CEO. I want to hear from you what changed the day that you went from managing partner to a CEO. What did you have to unlearn, maybe as a managing partner, compared to being the CEO?
The managing partner of a law firm is more or less like a CEO. So it's a equivalent, the same thing. One of the things that I realized, and I was much younger and not as experienced as maybe other people in that role, and I had a wonderful group of partners. These were fabulous people, and
Hmm.
I had learned from them. These were my role models. So when I became in charge, it was difficult not to be as deferential as I had been as a law clerk to these same people. And so one of the things I think I learned in that experience is you have to be yourself. You can't pretend to be like a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. After all, there's only 500 of them. And there's a lot of little guys like us or like
Yeah.
me. And so I just learned that I believe that collaborative leadership for me is the
Mm.
most effective. Then it doesn't matter if you're the smartest guy in the room or you're not. If it's service based, if it's not ego driven, you don't have to pretend to be the person with all the answers, the leader that everybody has to look up to. I think you can lead from with a lot of equality. Others, the more I've experienced, and I'm a lot more experienced now, and I've started other companies, and I'm helping other companies, large and small. I find it's true. Maybe if I was being called by Fortune 50 companies, they may see it differently. But in my little world, I still think those foundationals are excellent for leadership. And if you can just remember, we're all just human beings.
Yeah.
And just because you like to take off, and I don't play golf, you like to take off and play golf, that doesn't mean when one of your employees would like to go see their kid play softball, they
Yeah.
want to take off. So I think there's a lot of room in leadership to maintain your humility along with boldness, being courageous, and find that kind of respect for the people with whom you're working. And I think you'll be not so ego driven, but service driven. I believe that's a good way to lead. And I learned that from my first, attempts at leadership when I really didn't have the skills or the experience of my partners.
Well, so I also operate on from the lens of collaboration, and I like the fact that you mentioned that because I think if you invite others in, they'll feel valued and they'll be ready to contribute their best, so that you can work together and move the organization forward. Now, let's talk about mistakes, because it's all not rosy, right? As a leader, can you, if you don't mind, share maybe a leadership mistake that you made as a CEO that you still see other leaders making or repeating right now?
How much time do you have for my mistakes?
We just want to hear one.
Well, okay. Here's a big one.
Hmm.
You mentioned our activities in Russia, post Soviet Russia.
Yeah.
I won't give you the background, but we raised funds and started a large undertaking for a small company in Russia. And our premise was based on dealing with the government and no private companies because they weren't creditworthy, they weren't trustworthy. But the government in Russia had never defaulted on debt, ever, even during the revolution years ago. And so we built a whole business with a warehouse and computer network and employees and all that in Russia. And it was based on only working with government institutions. So if you can imagine this country, the VA, for example, it gets
Yeah.
its funding, from the government. And then you work with the VA and its pharmacies, they're going to pay you.
Hmm.
We were involved with pharmaceuticals, medical equipment, and so forth. And it went fabulously
Oh,
until the the Russian economy collapsed.
So,
1997, 1998, oil prices collapsed. It going on. It collapsed. And it took us a long time to figure out why our clients were getting slower and slower in paying us.
mm,
And it wasn't bad faith. The money wasn't filtering down from the national government to the regional governments to the hospitals. And so it was a mistake in the sense that we had taken on a risky undertaking in Russia in those days. We knew there was 100% risk. What we didn't anticipate that the government would fail.
yeah,
Some people call that a black swan experience where nobody can. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, me more than the other people involved, I'd say I made a mistake in not anticipating that this new Russian government might not be as stable as the rest of the world was anticipating. And so it wasn't that we made bad decisions on the business or how to do distribution. It was that the mistake was in having confidence in a government that was still in transition.
Yeah. Thank you.
So
Thank you for sharing.
I
I
got
think
more.
I think black swan events can be really difficult and challenging to manage because it's unplanned, it's unknown. Nobody was looking at it that this will happen. So, but it's part of leadership burden to carry and manage. So, thank you, Marty, for sharing that. Now, I know you are an advisor for so many CEOs. I want to hear maybe what kind of problem does a CEO bring to you that they can't necessarily or they won't want to discuss with their own team, but they'll feel more comfortable to talk with you? What are those?
That is a really probing question. When people come to me, they usually think they have a business problem. I usually think they don't because they know their business. If it was just a pure business problem, most businesses can figure it out, or they need a specialist, to get the computer system changed, whatever. When people come to me, I've come to realize they usually have a messy problem that they haven't figured out. And it's not what they tell me. I listen a lot. I really listen and try to figure out what is the underlying root cause of this so-called business problem. And it sounds a little simplistic. It is simplistic. I have two questions that are in my head, and if the people I think won't be too defensive, I'll say them out loud. But basically, my questions are, number one, where is the dysfunction? How high up the corporate ladder does it go? If it's with the founder or the CEO, it's very difficult to fix the company without fixing them.
Yeah.
The second question I often have is, after all the strutting around how great things are, how much money we're making, is the founder, the leadership, really finding satisfaction in what they're doing? Or is it all a big charade that they won't ever recognize to their deathbed that this was some game I was playing to the wrong scoreboard? So when I'm trying to figure out what's the root cause of the problem, it's usually a question between people, a people problem, not a direct business problem. And those are difficult to figure out because you touch on a lot of areas in which people are completely uncomfortable in discussing. They're hiding something. They are not digging deep. And I think personal problems affect the business, and business problems affect personal life. And so I try to take a holistic view of what's really going on here. And it typically touches on a nerve that is not something that's being discussed. And the other thing I try to do in helping people is I think Many CEOs don't have a real confidant that they can talk about what's really bothering them, what they're really frightened of, what they're worried about. They don't want to take their business home. They don't want to talk to people on the executive committee and scare them. Everybody's got their own games they're playing, if there's politics on. And so I found for some people, just having a confidant in whom they can trust and really share their problems is another way of figuring out what's the business issue here.
Mm. Okay, thank you, Matthew. So as we are wrapping it, I want you to tell our listeners, what do you want them to start doing differently based on all our conversation today? Maybe today's Friday, starting on Monday. What should they know? What should they start doing differently, in terms of managing their career?
It took me many, many years to figure this out. And I finally got introduced to some wonderful Buddhist practices. And I read every morning about all kinds of things, including that. And one of the things I learned is and this was scientifically studied in the New York Times bestseller on breathing. I have found that I would have saved a lot of anguish in my life if before phone calls, before walking into a meeting, I took two, not 100, two deep breaths, longer on the exhale. The physiological changes, stress management, it's amazing.
Wow.
So for people who aren't familiar with that and it sounds so hokey, try it. Before you run down the hall to your next meeting and you haven't gotten rid of the toxins from the last meeting, if you could sit down, it's really good, but at least stop. Don't do it while you're running. Take two deep breaths, close your eyes, focus on what's next. That's one thing. The last thing I'll say, I developed this motto over the last many, many years after dealing with a lot of difficult people, bad actors. My goal, and I would share this with your listeners, my goal, not that I can always do it, my goal is to work with good people on good projects in good faith. You eliminate so many of the unnecessary problems. You'll still have problems, still have crises, but when you're dealing with good people, it makes a difference. And when you find out they don't meet the criteria, you change your attitude. I like to joke and say, that's when I stop talking about collaboration and talk about negotiations. And then I put one hand on my wallet, one hand on their throat. Now let's talk. But I prefer to work with good people on good projects in good faith.
I love that. Good people, good project, good faith. Thank you very much, Marty, for coming on the show. We enjoyed this conversation and the tons of experience that you shared with our listeners today. I do continue to wish you the best. Your book, The Pinball Theory, is it out or is just about to
Yeah,
come?
it's out. It's out. If you just go on Amazon.com,
Okay.
The Pinball Theory of Business and Life, because it's a lot about life as well as business,
Yeah.
by Marty Snyder. And it's in hardback, paperback, ebook, audiobook, whatever's convenient. I used to spend a lot of time driving, and I learned so much about listening to books, in the car.
Same here. Same here. Thank
And
you.
my website's just my name. It's snyderadvisory.com. Any of your listeners are welcome. Send me an email if I can be helpful or answer any questions. It's marty@snyderadvisory.com.
That's awesome. I'm going to leave your links in my show notes so that my listeners can continue to connect with you. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It really was a pleasure. I appreciate it.